Hello, hello. This is my January reading wrap-up. January was a really good month for me. I would say every book that I read is one that I would recommend to others. The genres were mixed as well, which I was really quite happy about. So let's start. The first one of the month was Season of Fear by Emily Cooper. This is a fantasy fairy tale with feminist overtones, just like I love fairy tales to be. It's fast-paced, it's easy to fall into, it's hugely entertaining, gory in some places, and thematically quite poignant. The story is set in, and watch me really butcher the pronunciation of these words, the story is set in a small village called Hulency that borders the Hexenwald, which is a forest crawling with bloodthirsty creatures, as most fairy tale forests are wont to be, such as vampiric beings and enormous serpents, the usual fairy tale nightmares. And in order to keep these beasts at bay, the women of the village, and only the women, must feed the Saint of Fear, who comes in from the forest to feed off of their fear. The more authentic the fear, the safer the village. And if the women fail in satiating this Saint of Fear, then it will devour someone, one of the women. Elsa is our main character, and the problem with Elsa is that she doesn't feel fear. She feels sadness, and she feels happiness and joy and lust, but she does not feel fear. And when the saint discovers this, he threatens to devour her sister unless Elsa can learn to fear, learn to scream convincingly enough. And when the people of the village find out that Elsa is not fearful, doesn't feel fear, they of course banish her to the forest. And she goes because she wants to save her sister somehow. What I really loved about this novel was that it reads like a traditional fairy tale. Folk-eating beasts, moral lessons, that deep feminist undercurrent, as I said. It would be a fantastic text for discussing power, for discussing fear and gendered expectations and resistance. So that was Season of Fear by Emily Cooper. My second book was Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell, and I wanted to read it before I went to see the movie. And I'll admit up front that this was kind of a personal one to me. I love Shakespeare, and I loved teaching Shakespeare when I taught high school. I especially loved Hamlet. So this particular literary novel hit a little differently for me. The story opens with young Hamnet desperately searching for help because his twin sister Judith is sick. So he is looking for an adult in order to help with his sister. We, the reader, experience his fear, his confusion, and even the cruelty he encounters through his own eyes by those who are supposed to love him. It's quite devastating. But the heart of the novel belongs to Shakespeare's wife, Agnes, and they pronounce it differently in the movie, but it's spelled Agnes. Shakespeare's wife. O'Farrell, the author, gives her a fully realized inner life. She's a healer, she's a bee whisperer, she's deeply intuitive, she's viewed by her community as strange and unmarriageable, and we also get to see her childhood trauma, her complicated marriage to Shakespeare eventually, and her fierce love for her children. And when tragedy strikes, and we know it will, the novel becomes a profound meditation on grief, on loss, on identity, particularly, I would say, parental grief or maternal grief. And Agnes's heartbreak lingers long after the final page. I don't cry often when I read books, but this one I definitely welled up. O'Farrell's writing, I find, is beautifully lyrical without being over the top. Her shifting timelines and perspectives, I think, are masterfully handled, and I've seen some reviews where some readers didn't like that. And if I was still teaching, as I was reading this, as I was still teaching, I kept thinking I would totally use this in my classroom. So that is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. Third was I, Medusa by Anya Gray. And I loved this fantasy, young adult LGBTQ romantasy. And I'm not a huge romantasy reader, but this one was special. I listened to it and I read it at the same time. And the Audible book is fabulous. I felt as though Medusa, or Medi, as she's called by those who love her, I felt very close to her. I felt like she was one of my friends. And so if you can read and listen to it, or at least listen to it, it's definitely worth it. So the author imagines Medusa, or Medi, as I mentioned earlier, a 17-year-old girl who is mortal, but born to a family of gods. She's intelligent, she's principled, she's deeply, deeply attuned to injustice when it comes to the lowly folk and when it comes to women and children. And these traits attract Athena, the goddess Athena, and so Athena basically grants her permission to become a priestess in her temple. Now, Medusa doesn't escape Poseidon's attentions, as we all know, as the myth goes. But what I really enjoyed about this particular novel is that the author deeply humanizes Medusa and her infatuation with Poseidon. She renders Medi as a very realistic 17-year-old girl. And it's so painful to watch Medi being groomed by Poseidon and her response to this grooming. We just want to take her and shake her. But it seems so realistic in my reading, how she would respond to the attention of this beautiful god who starts paying attention and making her feel special. I wanted to shout at her, but I also understood her decisions. The novel tackles, like I said, it tackles grooming, it tackles assault culture, it tackles all of the heavy-duty themes that exist in our world with compassion and with clarity. Medusa, or Medi, is not portrayed as a monster in this book. She actually is more portrayed as a victim of the social constructs that she's a part of. And the fact that she's a young, beautiful woman and how she is taken advantage of those in power. I finished this novel heartbroken and angry, and I think it would make a really good novel for discussion in a book club. So that is I, Medusa by Anya Gray. Or Ayana Gray? Ayana Gray. Next was The Safe Keep by Yael van der Wouden. It's a historical literary novel set in post-World War II Europe. The Safe Keep is a quiet, rather unsettling novel about identity and isolation and loneliness and desire. Our main character is Isabel, and she lives in her childhood home, clinging to a life that has become routine and controlled. She very much presents obsessive compulsive disorder in that she has to line up all of the cutlery in the kitchen, for example, counting her spoons daily and managing inventories, and this paranoia that she is being taken advantage of by the help. in a way to hold her life together. But when her brother brings his mistress Rose to stay in this very rigid household that she keeps for herself, her world as she knows it begins to fracture, and her identity as she knows it begins to fracture as well. The novel unfolds, I found, in three parts. You've got this Isabel and her tightly controlled life. You've got Rose's perspective through journal entries. And finally, you have this resolution, or the denouement from the conflict that arises when these two elements come together. It is a story that is subtle, very sensual in its writing, and deeply moving, I think, without being gratuitous, and beautifully, beautifully written. It's definitely a book that would also be really good for book clubs, because I think it would generate a lot of discussion. Next book was Grace by A.M. Shine. This one is out February 10th, so soon. I've never read anything by A.M. Shine before, and this one is an Irish Gothic horror novel that is very much a folkloric, atmospheric, creepy novel. So the author Grace, who's the name written as the title, Grace returns to the island of her birth after the death of her biological mother, a woman that she cannot remember. She was adopted as a young child. And the island is this mysterious, isolated island that's shrouded in fog. It's an island that is haunted by various disappearances, by its inhabitants, especially children, and it is definitely an island that holds deep and dark secrets. As the narrative unfolds, we get multiple perspectives of the past and what is happening in real time from various islanders. And the island's history is slowly revealed, and it's almost like the simmering pot. We learn of the evil that exists on the island and how Grace fits in with the stories of the past and the evil that exists. It is dark. It is a grisly novel. It's very much unapologetically unsettling. Well, I personally would have liked to have our main character, Grace, play a more active role in the unraveling of the mystery. The mythology is fascinating, and the final twist it's crazy. The final twist is absolutely crazy. So if you enjoy horror novels and like to be kind of immediately immersed in this creepy atmosphere, then Grace by A.M. Shine is one for you. It's out February 10th, like I said. I had this memorized, how to pronounce this beautiful Irish name. Saoirse by Charlene Hooterbeis is out February 24th. I love this book. It was a literary novel, a literary story with historical references. Sarah Walsh flees Michigan under threat of violence and reinvents herself as Saoirse, which apparently means freedom. So she goes to Ireland and creates this new life for herself. And the novel is organized in such a way that it alternates between her traumatic past and her fragile rebuilding of this new life that she is making for herself. She starts manifesting her true gifts. She's this wonderful artist. And the conflict, even though there's a variety of conflicts, the main crisis, I guess, evolves when she is publicly recognized for her artistic gift and starts winning awards, and then all of a sudden she is faced with her past. And her past definitely begins to catch up with her. It's a novel of resilience. It's a novel of found family, the healing power of art, the fact that in our life we might make deeply painful choices that affect us throughout and affect those who around us whom we love, makes it a story that is painfully human. I both listened and read it, and the audiobook is wonderfully read as well. So if that is something that you're interested in, the Audible book, the narration is lovely. And I love the fact that it's kind of organized in such a way that each section, each chapter is titled according to the artwork that she creates. And the artwork manifests what time or a period in her life and the pain that she was experiencing at that time. So I really kind of liked that way of organizing the novel. Next book was Women of a Promiscuous Nature by Donna Everhart. It's a historical novel, and I got to tell you, I was furious, not just at the beginning of the story, but throughout my reading of it, which is why it makes, I think, an important novel to read. It's set during World War I and explores the real history of women being imprisoned under the guise of protecting soldiers from venereal disease, because it was all the woman's fault. Women are detained for being pretty, for walking alone, for owning businesses, or basically just for being abused. So if you were to, present the threat of seducing a man, then you were basically arrested and you were put in an institution. The characters, Ruth and Stella and others, are unforgettable, and the injustice that they experience is relentless. And the author, Donna Everhart, she has at the very beginning the actual legal policy, an act that was created in the States that basically put this treatment of women into law. So there is this basis of truth that exists around her fictional story that lends itself to even more a feeling of outrage in the reader. It is compelling. I wouldn't say I enjoyed it, but it definitely made me think. But it is incredibly accessible to readers, and I think it's quite relevant. And again, I think this would be a really good book for a book study as well. Next book was Maureen by Rachel Joyce, and if you liked The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry, this companion novel I almost liked better. And it is Maureen's story, Harold Fry's wife's story. And she comes across as a quite unlikable character, but I really felt empathy toward her. She reminded me of a few people in my life. She is grumpy, she is judgmental, but she's deeply wounded for a variety of reasons. And if you've read The Pilgrimage of Harold Fry, like I said, you kind of know what one of those wounds are that she possesses. I don't want to give anything away. She, in this book, undertakes her own journey, and through reflection and a reluctant connection to various people that she meets along the way, she begins to soften at the edges, and she begins to understand why she was this prickly, grumpy woman, and and forgives herself and forgives others, and definitely learns from the adventure that she undergoes. It's very short and it's beautifully written. So again, it's Maureen by Rachel Joyce. Next book was A Scar Like a River by Lisa Graff, and it's newly published, so you can get it. It is a young adult novel, more of a middle grade novel, I would say. Our main character is Fallon, and she's a 13-year-old who is obsessed with musical theater, but she holds a secret, and the secret is behind the scar that she wears on her face. It's a scar that runs pretty much diagonally across her face, so it's not something that she can hide. And the trauma behind the scar is serious, very serious and heartbreaking. Her voice and her characterization is warm and funny and absolutely resilient. So I loved the character of Fallon. This novel handles a very, very heavy subject matter with surprisingly remarkable lightness but care. And it never feels overwhelming. And our protagonist, Fallon, is someone I think that any reader will love. It says it's recommended for ages 9 to 14, and it does present clear trigger warnings. It would be, I think, a strong addition to any middle grade classroom or any middle grade library. And it would work well for independent or small group discussion. But it's not, I didn't find it dark in any way. I found that our protagonist is someone who is deeply, deeply heroic, very, very likable, very, very resilient. So that was my month. It was a really good month, a little combination of horror and middle grade and historical, Audible, as well as hard copy reading as well. And I'm finding my February has started off with being one of kind of dark, mysterious horror genre. So it'll be interesting to see what books I actually complete this month and if I vary my genres at all. Anyway, thank you. And I hope some of these books sound remotely or even slightly entertaining for you to pick up and try for yourself. Bye.